everyone. Whoops, mic's not on. Good evening, everyone. It is time to call to order this meeting of the Gallatin City Council Committee. It is 6:03 on April 25th, 2023, and we'll begin with the roll call. Ms. Kitzel, please.
Vice Mayor Love.
Here.
Councilman Carter.
Present.
Councilman Fan.
Here.
Councilman Fennell.
Here.
Councilwoman George is absent. Councilman Hayes.
Present.
And Councilman Juvance. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Tonight you have before you the minutes from the April 11th, 2023 Council Committee meeting. Motion. Second. Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Vice Mayor Love. Any corrections or additions requested? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from April 11th, 2023, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Minutes are unanimously approved. We'll move now to public recognition. This is the time of the meeting that you can speak to an item, whether it's on the agenda or not, because this is a work session. So you'll have 5 minutes to speak. We ask that you give us your name and your address. And public recognition is now open if you'd like to come forward.
We just want to hand out some documents, y'all.
Come to the podium, please.
Good evening, everybody. It's Patrick Rainers, 317 Malone Drive. And I just want to tell the city how much I appreciate the hard work that they've done and the due diligence that they've done. And I think we got a fine day now where the truth is the truth. Beliefs, hope, wishes, and falsehoods fall down to the truth. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak under public recognition tonight? Now would be your time to do so. Seeing no one, we'll declare public recognition closed. Move to the regular agenda, and the first item is Resolution R2305-39. Oh, Mayor's comments. Thank you, Ms. Mama Colley. I did. Huh? Mr. Hayes really appreciates that. Just some events coming up. Probably the big thing to tell you about is this weekend. It is the Square Fest. Sorry. This weekend is Square Fest, and that is happening from 10 until 5 this Saturday. Historic Downtown Square. Parking is going to be a challenge, but First Baptist from Hendersonville, I saw yesterday, is going to be providing some shuttle service, so that will be lovely. Also coming up is Volunteer State Community College Art Show at the Humanities Building on the Vol State campus. That's tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. That should be the opening, I do believe. This Thursday is going to be the Youth Job and Opportunity Fair at the American Job Center. That happens from 3 till 6 p.m., and that is for young people looking for seasonal employment. This weekend is the legislative series sponsored by the Gallatin Chamber. The Education Update is happening with Dr. Dale Phillips. There is Special Olympics kicking off this weekend. It's going to begin this year with a torch run with law enforcement. So that's going to begin at Northfield Church at 9 a.m. And then the Special Olympics games will be, this is actually Friday. I may have said Saturday. I apologize if I did. And then the games will be at Station Camp from 9:30 until 4 p.m. Also, the Educated Woman Luncheon's happening that day. And then this weekend is Pedal for Paws, which is a fundraiser for the Spay and Neuter Alliance. That's a bike ride. Also, the Miracle League's first game of the season. You've heard me talk about that before. It's a great opportunity to go out and support some really special teams playing in our beautiful Miracle Park. That's at 10 a.m. on Saturday. As I mentioned, the Square Fest is from 10 until 5. Nick Tuttle's birthday is happening on the 30th. And let's see, National Day of Prayer is coming up on the 4th of May. And I am still working, I brought this with me this evening, but for your information, I'm still working on a solution, likely involving the City Hall parking lot, for the Bandit Run 2023, which is happening in June. So I will follow up with you all on that later. So that will conclude Mayor's comments. Now we'll go to the regular agenda. Item 1, Resolution R2305-39, granting permission to submit letter of intent to apply for Tennessee Department of Health Healthy Built Environment Grant. And for that, Mr. McCord from our Planning Department, also involving Mr. Tuttle and Mr. Brown.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're great.
We're asking, and I mentioned this at our last work session that we're going to, would like to apply for a grant for a healthy built environment. It's for disadvantaged, vulnerable communities to provide facilities that will encourage people to participate in physical activity, improve their health. There is no matching grant for this. There's a two-step process. One is to submit a notice of intent or a letter of intent, and then the second part is to actually apply for the funds if you are selected. So we've identified some cost feasible, let's say, that there's a maximum cost for $80,000 for the grant, and things such as bike racks and water bottle stations, even repair stations for bicycles and so forth. Most likely, we'll be working with, of course, engineering and in the recreation department to identify appropriate locations to place these within the confines of the qualification of the grant.
Questions for Mr. McCord on this? Okay.
Permission to move forward with this?
Second. Motion by Mr. Fan, second by Ms. Vice Mayor Love. We will move this on in the form of a resolution to the next council meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It does unanimously move along. Item 2 is Resolution R2305-40. This is supporting the filing of a notice of intent to apply for a multimodal access grant and to apply for a multimodal access grant from the Tennessee Department of Transportation for the planning and development of the Ball State Gap Trail Phase 2C, a multimodal improvement project in the city of Gallatin.
Very similar to the other one. Instead of a health department grant, it's a Department of Transportation grant. And we were looking to do a segment of the Vol State Gap Trail that will take it from Thorn Boulevard across the new bridge that will be not part of the grant, but will be built as a separate project by TDOT to replace the bridge over West Camp Creek, Station Camp Creek, and then terminate that at Caldwell Park. And it's a grant for $1,125,000. The city is required to provide at least a 10% match, so that'd be $125,000 for a total of $1.25 million. And so it's about a quarter of a mile or so. It's not a third of a mile. So we have grant funds from similar grant sources that are moving forward on segments of the Vol State Gap Trail that will take it up the Creek Valley, up through Kennesaw Farms, and back up and match up with the existing trail that's constructed on the Edison apartment complex property.
Motion to send it on.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Love, second by Councilman Hayes. Any questions, discussion? Okay, Mr. Chivance?
Yeah, there's a match of 125,000.
That's right.
That grant. I think we have more important things to spend the money on. The budget already, we go picking our reserve, so I'm not going to vote yes on that. $125,000, that's a lot of money. We can do things too.
Anyone else? All right, all in favor of moving along Resolution R2305-40, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
It moves forward with a vote of 5-1. Item number 3 is ordinance 02305-32, reappropriating old bond funds. Ms. Nichols, you want me to help? Okay. Oh, it's okay. Hey, that's success.
Thank you, ma'am.
Handed out a clean version. I had a typo on one of my account numbers, and then on the back, top of the back, I had to change the purpose for one of the projects. But long story short, we're trying to reappropriate some old bond funds on projects that are moving quicker. Prior years, we've borrowed money at a relatively low rate, but we've earned a relatively low rate on those idle funds. Now that interest rates have gone up so high, we've borrowed money at a really low rate, we haven't spent that money, and so we're earning interest at a higher rate on it, which gets us in trouble with the federal government with bond arbitrage issues. So we're trying to move these projects around to where we can spend this money down quickly and not get in trouble with the federal government and arbitrage compliance. So for the 2016 bond and the 2021 bond, we want to reallocate the dollars. In the 2016 bond, we're going to decrease the money for Belvedere Long Hollow intersection improvement because that's being swallowed up into the larger state project. We've also completed the work on Airport Road from Gregory Drive to Hartsville Pike, so there's a little bit of money left in that. And we want to shift those dollars up into the engineering office building where they're going to build out the signal control center. Also, there were funds in the Fire Hall 1 renovation. Again, we have potential plans for a new Fire Hall 1, so that project has been put on hold momentarily. So those dollars are also going to the engineering budget. Smith Street improvements, we're increasing that by $1 million, and we're taking funds from the 2021 bond that were previously allocated for Belvedere and 109, or Belvedere and Long Hollow, the Town Creek flood improvements, and there was a little bit left over in the Gulf irrigation. Additionally, we're going to move some general fund projects into the bond, projects that we've already paid for and or are currently paying for. Those are noted: Thompson Park renovations, Airport Road, Cairo Road turn signal, the State Route 386 174 improvement that the state will be doing, and then the gun range. Since we're taking bond money away from previously approved projects, as part of this, we also want to commit and assign some reserve dollars, so when those projects do get moving, those funds will be made available, and that's the last two sections of this ordinance. Any questions?
I think this is a really good direction to go with dedicating those reserve funds and, of course, doing what we need to with our bond issuance. Is there anyone that has any questions, needs any additional understanding?
Motion to send it on.
Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Councilman Fan. Mr. Juvance wishes to be recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. This reserve fund, where is the money coming from? It's
I'm sorry?
reallocated from the bonds, the reserve funds?
It would be part of the unallocated, unassigned general fund balance. It's currently in the unassigned portion, and we're going to assign it.
And some of it we kind of mentioned in the budget presentation that we were setting it aside for dedicated funding for the future.
And my other question is about Smith Street, because we're going to widen Smith Street, but I thought the original intent was we had to widen that because of the parking lot more than the courthouse. That was just for the courthouse? Okay.
At one point, there was talk of putting the garage on Smith Street as well, but the discussion to widen Smith Street actually predated that consideration of the garage being there. You really need it for the traffic that's going to be turning in and out of there, including the inmate transport, and really would have helped to have it done before the construction, but that would have torn it up again, so that's what it is.
That's all. Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else? Okay, this is ordinance 02305-32. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Moves on to council. That does remind me of a very important announcement that I should have shared at the beginning of the meeting because it's going to make some people really happy. But guess what? Signalized intersection becomes activated tomorrow.
I hope it's Cairo Road.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, that would be it. So some people in that area are going to be really happy, assuming it all goes as planned. So thank you for reminding me of that. And thank you, Ms. Nichols, for your work on getting us all straight with that. And item number 4 is ordinance 02305-33. And this is appropriating funds for 2023 year-end budget adjustments. Ms. Nichols again.
Again, we're just cleaning up some account numbers to make sure that no department or no area goes over budget. First item is where we raised additional funds for the Shop with a Cop firefighter program and spent those on needy individuals. So we need to increase the budget for that. Same thing with the drug fund. They received additional funds from fines, donations, plus they have a larger reserve. They want to spend some of that down. In the gas department, we're increasing the estimated interest earnings and then allocating that out to depreciation, gas T&D data processing, gas T&D maintenance and repair. In the general fund, there are a number of adjustments. We did not take any money out of the fund balance. We funded all this with adjustments to revenue lines as well. The first 5 lines are revenues that are coming in better than anticipated. Then the remaining section of accounts from the general fund are just small items in various departments that need to be adjusted before year end in an effort to keep the total department from going over budget. Same thing with IDB, HEHFB, similar to what I mentioned last week. We had those labeled backwards, so our budgets were backwards. Then the last page are a number of adjustments in the water sewer fund. Again, no money coming from their reserves. We're making adjustments to different revenue lines and decreasing a couple of expense lines to increase other lines. And hopefully that will get us cleaned up so that nobody will be over budget at year end.
Any questions on this? Anyone?
Motion to send to council.
Kind of looks scary, but sometimes things cost us more money because there's more services to be provided, and that's where that additional revenue comes from. Motion by Councilman Javant, second by Councilman Hayes. Any further discussion? All in favor of sending on ordinance 02305-33, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. It will move forward unanimously. Item 5 is Resolution R2305-38, amending personnel rules and regulations relating to overtime, extra duty, longevity, on-call, holidays, vacation, and service recognitions. And Ms. Nichols, this is your last item of the evening.
Got one more.
Oh, shoot, wait, darn. Oh, okay. Well, next one's easy.
As part of last year's salary study and as a result of comments from employees and an attempt to attract and retain employees, we're proposing a number of changes to the personnel rules surrounding the areas of longevity service awards, holiday, overtime instances. There are a number of changes. The first one is in the area of overtime. We're changing the rule to be more lenient towards the employee than what the federal minimum requires. Anytime an employee is called back into work after they've already completed their shift, they're going to be paid at an overtime rate regardless of how many hours they have for the week. There was a young man that spoke last spring when we were discussing the salary study. He was speaking specifically on holiday, but anytime an employee is off for holiday, vacation, sick, but they also have to work overtime or they get called back in for a break or a repair or an emergency, since they've been off one day during the week, that time is at straight time. And they have a hard time getting people to show up voluntarily, or it's the same few employees who are showing up and just receiving straight time for these after-hour calls. So we're changing that to be paid at an overtime rate. The second change is where most employees who are going to be required to work on a holiday will be paid double time for those hours. Again, as the employee spoke last spring, when they get called in on a holiday, it's still at straight time. And we think that's even more harsh on the employee because they're taken away from their family time, their family events that are scheduled over the holidays. So we want to recommend paying double time for any hours that are worked on a holiday.
Previously, what we were doing, not to interrupt, but because some of you may not realize, we were giving them the opportunity to take a holiday day of their choice in the month before, during, or after the holiday, so.
We are
This is also much better for us on the bookkeeping side, just with the size of the workforce that we have now. Trying to keep all that straight is often challenging.
Yes, that process had become very manually, had a lot of manual requirements to it. Each department had to track all of their employees, plus finance, or HR had to track them as well. So as we've grown larger and larger, that's just too cumbersome to handle manually. So we felt that giving them double time pay would also help offset that lack of flexibility on when they could take it. Another area that we've improved is the longevity. Currently, you do not earn longevity until after you've been employed for 5 years, and then it's at a staggered rate from $50 per year to a maximum of $900 per year at 20 years. We are proposing that longevity begin being paid after 3 years at a rate of $100 per year of continuous service and no cap on that. We've also defined on-call pay. There are some departments that have individual employees that, by nature of what they do, are on call. We did not set a rate of pay for that because it would vary from department to department, but that will be in their department level rules. Same thing for when someone is called back into work. Those hours will be paid at an overtime rate immediately, regardless of how many other hours they have for the week. And again, that minimum number of hours will be set at the department level depending on the need. The holiday rule changed by omitting the possibility for the employee to use it the month of, the month before, the month before, the month of, or the month after, but it is increasing the pay to double time when the employee is required to work on the holiday, with the exception of firefighters. Vacation leave, there was a small clause missing about not accruing leave while on leave without pay. That's already in the sick leave rule. It just was omitted in the vacation rule at some point. We want to add that in. And then last but not least, service awards. Currently, we give a gift card for anywhere from $25 to $200, the max. But we turn around and tax the employee on that per the IRS regulations, and it has become quite a cumbersome process to purchase a large quantity of gift cards. So since we are beefing up the longevity, we would like to eliminate the gift card part of the service awards, but we will continue to recognize employees when they meet the 5-year, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-year milestones of service to the city. And on the copy that's in your packet, it says effective immediately upon passage. We would like to make that effective July 1 with the new budget year. If you,
Motion to send it on.
Motion and a second, with your permission, in the next version that you see at council next week, it will have the date beginning fiscal year. So if you're okay with that. Questions?
So what did you say, which one were you talking about, and you said except for firefighters?
being paid double time when they work the holiday. According to Chief Beeman, the way the holidays fall and when there's a 3-shift rotation, one shift has a distinct advantage on the number of holidays that they work in any given year. And it stays that way year after year because unless it's a leap year, everything on the calendar shifts one day and the shifts shift one day. So for example, A shift will have the majority of Monday holidays. So they're going to get a financial advantage for being on A shift that B shift and C shift would not receive. He felt like they know when, just by the nature of their job, they're going to be required to work a holiday, and therefore he did not want them included in the double time pay. They are getting a new pay code for riding out of rank. He felt like that would make them happy. They are getting the time and a half pay if they get called back in for an additional shift or some other event. So he felt like that would suffice for them.
It seemed very fair to me, really.
Well, you would have 30 out of 90 employees with a distinct pay advantage just because of the shift they fell on. And
That part, I understand. But I mean, I know from experience how many holidays a lot of these guys miss, and they don't get anything extra, really.
well, they'll still be receiving their holiday pay, plus they will receive their hours worked. It just won't be at a double time rate.
Still have a benefit for working those days.
Just,
Feel like they're being punished because they happen to be on a shift that, or that everybody is being, in the fire department is because of what you just said about one shift getting more than the others, the way it works out.
That's the chief's recommendation.
Yeah.
thank you, ma'am. Talking police and fire, I'm just curious, maybe that's an HR question more than overtime for police and fire. Police will be paid over 171 hours per 28 days, and fire over 220 hours over 28 days. I'm just curious where did we come with these numbers?
The federal government,
Federal government?
yes.
Okay.
That is one of their pay options, overtime calculation options for public safety.
And just when you're going to clean up, there was page 36. Sound like Linda now. Just on top of the page 36, there is W by itself. That's probably need to be cleaned up. That's probably
Okay.
on the fourth line, just after employees. Just detail.
Susan understood and she sees it. Okay, anyone else?
And about the gift card, I'm not happy we remove that, I think.
What?
The gift card for the 5, 10, 25, 15, 20, 25, I think that was a good stuff.
Worked out the math on it and going to $100 per year. Even if you took into consideration the gift card and the old longevity, going to the $100 a year on longevity, the employee, it's been a day or two since I looked at this, I apologize, but the employee is usually at least double under the $100 rule than they would have been under the old longevity rule with a gift card.
I can't remember the budget number, but I think it is increases in the city's cost $270,000
Yes.
by changing to this new longevity and doing away with the service awards.
Service awards were only $5,000 total annually.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. We change the longevity to attract and keep people. And I read the number too. That's a nice number, and I appreciate. I think that was something we needed to do. But I know when the company I'm with, in my 5 years, they send me just a little catalog with stuff to choose in it, and man, that was great. That was, that made me happy. I think if you say it's just $5,000, we should not cut it. It's not because we do something to keep people. We need to cut something else on the back end. That's just the way I see it.
I think it.
It's a cumbersome manual process.
That-
HR has to buy the gift cards, and then payroll has to turn around and enter each one of the gift cards as a taxable fringe benefit. And as we get larger, it's more cumbersome
So
to
the
handle.
federal government probably gets about $2,000 of that gift card paid to them by the employees, and so they come out better with the longevity, and that's something they get every year versus every 5 years. So,
That was our reason for doing it.
I understand, but
I just should disclose that my son is a firefighter for Gallatin.
And I failed to mention, for firefighters that work 24-hour shifts, for police officers that work 12-hour shifts, they will now earn a holiday rate equivalent to their shift. Right now, the hours that they earn for holidays is short, so they have to use some vacation hours to actually complete a full, or to take a full day off. They'll no longer have to do that. There will be 24 paid hours of holiday or 12 paid hours of holiday for those individuals that don't work a 40-hour week. So
Sounds good.
that's also a caveat to kind of help them not get double pay.
beneficial all around. So this resolution R2305-38, all in favor of moving forward with the correction that will come with the effective date and the correction to a W, I think. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Moves along. And next, we have the financial reports, Ms. Nichols.
Financial reports, everything's moving along. We're making adjustments in the prior ordinance, so that'll clean up some of our accounts that are looking a little iffy. I just wanted to mention quickly, you may remember about this time last year, or maybe even sooner, we were looking at refunding some of our water sewer bonds to get, take advantage of market rates. And once we did the initial refunding of the 2014 bonds, things kind of deteriorated. 2 weeks ago, the market looked really good to refund some of our 2011s, and then last week it totally flopped. So we're still looking at that, and we may have something coming forward over the summer when rates stabilize. It might be advantageous for us to refund some of those 2011 bonds, but just wanted to mention we are still looking at those. And I'll be glad to answer any questions on the financials.
Questions regarding the financial reports?
thank you, ma'am. Sales tax, how are we looking?
I'm sorry?
Sales tax compared to month to month, are we still doing good or?
Yes, sir. It's still coming in strong.
Thank you, ma'am.
If you look back at where we're adjusting the year-end stuff, there's a number of, 300,000 that we're
Just
adjusting
sales
up for more sales tax than what we budgeted. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Nichols. Okay, so move on to item number 7, which is Resolution R2305-41, which is appointing the Human Resources Director. I want to share with you all what the process is. I printed it out today. I think Ms. Hamacali left it on your desk too for your review. But it's so we're clear on how we are prescribed to move this forward, and then we can discuss where we are with what this body wishes to do at this point. So where we are in the process now is that the expert panel will recommend a candidate for appointment to the city council. The city council will then consider for appointment the candidate recommended. Department heads shall be appointed by a majority vote of the council members present and shall serve at the will of the council. So we have the scoring that I passed out to you last week, which was from our expert panel. So if you consider the top score the recommended candidate, the proper movement of this body would be to consider the recommended candidate. And once you considered that recommended candidate, then you could accept or decline that recommended candidate and then move forward to other candidates if you were to decline that candidate. Am I saying this correctly, Ms. McCauley? I told her to jump in if I said anything wrong.
Yeah, you would consider and you take a vote, and if there's a majority vote, you're done. If you don't get a majority vote, then you move to the number 2 candidate, and you continue that process until you get a majority vote.
Yeah, because it says, secondly, if a majority vote does not occur, the expert panel will recommend another candidate to the city council. So I guess in that, we would consider the second highest score, the third highest score, the fourth highest score. This process will continue until the council has a majority vote. Once a majority vote occurs, the department head's appointment will be approved by resolution. The director, well, in this case, I guess me, will forward a request to offer containing the, to you all, I guess, would be the completed reference checks, the justifications to support the decision, the proposed salary, and the proposed effective date. When we left here last week, I was thinking about checking references, but then I had a candidate contact me and said to please let her know if we were going to be checking references. So then I thought, well, I don't want to check references until you have a candidate that you want me to check. Because, you know, I've never done this process myself. We've always had an HR director that kind of handled all this. So I'm doing this in their stead, and so that's what I think we ought to do. So there we are.
Kind of concerns me that somebody may not have wanted their references checked.
That doesn't concern me. I think it was more wanting to give them a heads up that they were going to be contacted. I would do the same, you know. They give us their references, so it's not like it's somebody that's going to say something bad about them. But say they're using a current employer or somebody that doesn't know they're contemplating. So.
That makes sense.
So we need a motion? Okay, I make a motion that we
And let's not use names, if you would. Let's use, okay, on your list with the scoring, you have 4 candidates. Let's make them, if you would, candidate 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is that okay with everybody?
We don't have that
don't have
anymore.
this, but that's okay.
I mean, I remember who's number 1 on the list.
You want me to make copies of the scoring list for y'all? I emailed it to you today, just as a reminder, after giving it to you last week.
Can use first name.
I remember who's number 1.
I remember who it was, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're not going to remember the other candidates if we don't move forward with those. So I could go make copies, or you could pull up in your email the scoring.
I'd say we vote on the first one if everybody remembers who number 1.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Hayes for, in this list, it would be candidate number 3. Correct?
If that's who the number 1 candidate was, yes. Yes.
Anyone else like to see this list?
I'm looking on my email, so.
I'd be really happy to have someone go make copies really quickly.
Sure,
Mr. Fenton said I can use his office. It's just across the hall. It'll be so quick. And that will eliminate any confusion.
And I was going to say, there are 2 members of the panel here if y'all had questions before you wanted to vote. Wait till the mayor gets back. But.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so, Ms. Trace, we had a motion. Was there a second?
Yes, Mr. Fan.
Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Councilman Fan. Would anyone like to discuss anything related to candidate number 3? Mr. Givons.
I'll talk in general. I think they were all great candidates. That was a great interview, and I kind of agree with the panel recommendation on the paper. And I appreciate that work, but when I'm looking at a candidate, I'm looking more not just at the number, I'm looking at people who are eager to work for the city and how much they want the job. I want sure they be there for the right reason. And a thing I've been using when I interview to make my mind was the follow-up after interview, when candidate come back to you after an interview and follow up on what happened. And I was actually surprised that only 2 out of the 4 candidates I interviewed did it. I was expecting a little more. We're not going to say name, but that's what I'm going to say. It's going to be obvious. We have an internal candidate who applied and is part of the selection. And I think, like I said, we need to look more at just the number we have on the paper. I think we have a good internet candidate, and that's what will get my support, because I think she's already there. She knows the ground. The people who work in the department know her. The people of the city know her. And I think she will be a good HR director. So that will be my first choice.
Understand, though, that we do have to go through the process.
Yes, ma'am. But
And I guess in kind of in what you're describing, I would tell this council there's no reason we can't come back to a candidate if we can't reach a majority vote on anybody first consideration. So, and I think that I discussed it a bit with you last week, that the panel looked at what they considered behavioral attributes related to conceptual ability, motivation to achieve, work habits, interpersonal skills, and management skills. I sent you all the questions so that you could see them. And then there are 2 council people and myself who also did interviews, and I think we probably ask our own questions, probably very specific to our position within the city of Gallatin. The other option, although we do have a motion, is to continue to let the interim act and give this body, actually, this body will still have another week to speak with the candidates because it doesn't get voted on until next week. But right now, we have a motion and a second, and if no one else is willing to discuss, I'm going to ask you all to vote on that.
Do you want to let them know that there are 2 members of the panel that are here if they do have questions from the panel?
I can. Our 2 internal panel members were Ms. Nichols from our finance department and Ms. Alexander from our legal department. So if any member of this body would have questions specific to their interview experiences, certainly I think they'd be open to answering those. So.
Kind of a tough thing, like you said earlier. We usually have an HR person that guides us through this, and
Well, the policy guides you through it.
But if you say we still have 1 week, I know Miss George wanted to interview the candidate, so I don't know where she stands or if she did it. If we push a name tonight, I mean, next week, when we vote on it, we're gonna have to go back and put another name. So, and I'm wondering about the other council, if you guys want to interview these people or not. That's, because again, we have, if you don't talk to them, all you're looking at is a number based on the work of the panel, the good work, but based on what I read this afternoon, the mayor sent us one question on every category, so.
I would feel, I don't mean to interrupt, but I would feel much better if more members of the council spoke to the candidates and perhaps even spoke to our internal panel members.
I agree.
So, but that's my preference.
You can put the current resolution on the agenda for next week and do your vote, because you're going to vote next week. If that's what, or you can start.
Their recommendation.
That's what I'm saying.
No, we would still go we would still have to follow the process. It's just
I
whether,
understand that.
are you
but
prepared to do it
But
now?
Bring
Get
these
rid of it.
people in, then we don't do what they say.
We don't do what you say. We did this for a reason.
No,
And
no,
now-
no.
And everybody's like,
No.
we're waffling.
No,
Let's do
we're
this.
not waffling. We're explaining what the process is
We've
and what
never
the
done
option
this
is.
anytime else.
We've never had only 2 council people to interview either.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, most of the council has participated.
Not
Most,
everybody, no.
no, I know you have not, and I appreciate that, 'cause you have a very good reason for not participating.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's rare to only have 2 council members participate in the interviews. It's also rare to have 4 good candidates. In our past not past, but within our past several hires, we've had several situations where we've had to go through more than one candidate to make a successful hire. So, that's there's always something unusual related to our hiring process. Last time we hired an HR director, our other HR director was retiring, and she was able to manage that process for us. So we're navigating it, we're following the process. We have a motion and a second. So the only proper other option at this point would be.
Well, right now, I guess unless they withdraw, you're going to have to vote, unless they withdraw their motion in
Did
second.
they not motion to defer it to?
Good. I said if they don't, if there's not another motion.
So those are what I feel like the only options are, is to go ahead and vote or defer. But if right now, the will of this body is to go ahead and vote on candidate number 3. So,
Can I make a motion to defer?
Motion that's on there first.
No, he can make a motion to defer.
motion to defer to
To the next work session.
next work session.
Ma'am?
The
That's-
thing
So
I
that's
fear
gonna have
with
to go-
that is pushing it so far out with candidates who are probably waiting on an answer. So, if we deferred it, I mean, if you want to defer it and you deferred it to the council meeting, then the option would remain to defer it again, but I really think we need to get it moving for all of the candidates.
Redo.
What process would we have to go through?
I'm not sure, is there a motion to defer?
No, I think he said withdrew his motion.
Redo my motion.
Well, if you don't want to follow the policy, you need to revoke the policy, rescind it, and go back to the way we used to do it, which y'all didn't like, and
But we would need to change the policy to do that. We are bound to follow the policy, whether we do it this week or next, or the next. But I said those as words
And I
of.
thought that's what we were doing, that's why we had a motion and
Okay.
a second.
Okay,
And
I was
thought
trying to
that's
follow,
what-
okay. We have a motion and a second, and so I'm going to ask this body to go ahead and vote on candidate number 3, whether you support them as your HR candidate. So with that, I'm going to ask Ms. Kittrell to call the roll for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Love,
No.
Councilman Carter,
Going to abstain.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilman Juvance.
No?
Mayor, 3 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 abstention.
Oh.
And the mayor votes.
Mayor votes,
Yeah, I
yeah.
vote as well. But a no creates a tie, and I am not inclined to vote yes at this time, and so what happens with the tie?
Move to the next one. There is no majority vote.
That's a good point. So I vote no, that creates a tie. We'll move to candidate number 2 by the ranking. No, I'm sorry, it would be, yeah, candidate number 4 would be the second ranking.
And let me clarify, when I said you would have to rescind, I mean, it's in a personal, would have to be a formal, we have to have a resolution. It's not something you can just do right now.
Yeah, it would have to be changed. We would have to go through the process of changing, which would take weeks and weeks.
But I do agree, if you're not going to follow the policy, you shouldn't have one. And I know that the panel members feel like they've probably wasted time.
Now, I will say that if we can't reach agreement elsewhere, that I can fully support the first recommended candidate, but if we can't reach.
I would too.
Okay, so,
Can I just move that we defer for 1 week until the actual council meeting, to give the other people time to go to talk to these candidates
motion to defer to the next council meeting,
next week.
which is next week, yeah, to the council meeting. Motion, second.
I'll second that.
Motion by Vice Mayor Love, second by Councilman Carter. All in favor of deferring, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, we're going to defer it to next meeting. It doesn't matter because we've already voted, but is all of this council that's here this evening, as far as you know, going to be here next week?
I won't be here.
I'll be here.
And I have a question. Are you going to start back with that same candidate next
think we
week?
should.
Okay, I do too. I was just going to make sure that we were on the same page.
Did you say you may not be here?
I might not, I'm not sure yet. I'm not either.
Well, then we won't even have a quorum next week, so.
I would like to make a motion that we look at this process again, maybe change it.
I can tell you, we put a lot of time and effort into that process when we did it. And I'm not saying that there may need to be some things that get worked out, but I would really hate to see it go back to the way we used to do it.
Yeah, the way that we used to do it was very difficult and very unfair to the candidates in my mind. I am with Councilman Hayes and how he feels about how the hiring in this city needs to happen.
I am too.
Okay, so the 3 of us are all aligned. And you know, and if the city of Gallatin
But
ever,
if that's the way, then, I never mind, I'm not.
I mean, this is our, this
is
is our prescribed process. This is what we must follow. But based on a motion that Councilman Fan is trying to make, I must make the point that there are ways to
I understand
improve
that
it.
motion,
Okay,
but it doesn't work.
and then just,
But we need to follow this if we're going to use it.
correct.
I think the problem we have there is that we are in front of 4 candidates. And the process, the way it's written, tells us basically we have to choose the first candidate offered by the panel. We maybe should change that, where if the panel offers 4 candidates, we open to 4 candidates.
Well, why do you have a panel then? What's the point of having the panel?
I think,
To go from 25 to 4.
So you don't want them to make a recommendation to council. You just want, I don't know that you're going to find a panel that wants to just narrow the field.
I do want them to make.
That's a long process. I mean, you can ask the internal candidates.
I like making the recommendation to council, especially in areas that have a lot of technical expertise that we likely don't have. I'm not certain, but I think that in the past, I know that in the past, we've had the panel make a recommendation of a candidate that would not accept the job. That's happened a few times. I think there was one instance, I can't remember if it was with this process or with the
It
previous
was with
process.
the previous process. Since we've had this process, I think we've gone with either the first candidate or they didn't accept and we moved on. I don't think there's been another instance where we haven't, that I can recall. I know what you're talking about, and that was one of the reasons that we enacted this policy.
So on the opposite side, why do we even interview them if we're not, if we
Yeah.
accept what the panel says? I mean, what's the point of our even interviewing?
Good point, too.
Yeah, we spend an afternoon with these people. I agree with you. If we just go through their list, what the point of interviewing them? We just let the panel do it.
Well, and the process is laid out so that you can consider the top candidates. You know,
And I-
The one that was just, the one with the high score here. No, we didn't vote her in, so she eliminated completely?
no,
No, we're starting over.
I said this last week, and I stand by this. I believe any 4 of these candidates could do the job. I really do. But what I want to find is the person that fits our needs, our circumstances, and the best. You know, and everybody is going to have some weaknesses when they come on board. And so in interviewing them, I have a good sense of what those are. And I don't feel that everyone does. And that challenges me with making a decision. Like, if you all had been supportive of the first candidate and had met with them, I would be right there with you voting to support them.
I just felt like that we was going by what we decided to do. You know, when we done the hiring, firing, I've done it for years for the sheriff's department, and the scores come out, and we would take the top 3 people and you know, decide. And part of this right here, it's like, well, the number 1 is what we need to decide, but there again, we're giving 4 people up here, and that puts me back to thinking of the way that we used to do the hiring and firing for the sheriff's department, is we had a choice, and not all the time that we would pick the first candidate up there that scored the highest. You know, and it all basically boiled down to the interviews and the talking and the personal preferences. I didn't show up for the meetings because I figured that that's what we was going to go by right here. But
And I do think,
I feel, excuse me.
no, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I do feel strongly for the girl that's in the office right now. And from what I've talked through the other, am I not supposed to say that?
Probably not
That
the
was a little
best way to put it.
insensitive. That was a little insensitive.
Especially as the HR director, but go ahead.
Our interim director would be the proper
Randall
terminology.
Director, I think she's done a good job. I'll leave it at that.
That's what I was saying initially, that we have, you know, the number doesn't say everything, doesn't say the full story. And, you know, I like candidate number 1. I think she did a good interview with me, but I still think that we have a strong internal candidate, and that shows a lot of things. That shows good things for the city, that we can actually promote somebody from the inside, and that shows the employees that there is a path to go up, and that's important. And she's part of the 4 selected, so that's the way I see it. And again, they were all fantastic candidates.
We vote on the motion to
Yes,
defer?
we did.
Okay. All right, so that's where we are at this point. It will come forward. You all know that Ms. Alexander and Ms. Nichols were on the internal panel. Those would be good people to reach out to. And certainly the candidates that were interviewed, you have their resumes and contact information. They would be good people to reach out to. If you would like help from the HR department for having any conversations with any of them, Ms. Tetrine or I don't remember, Ms. Russell, who's there and who's not. So, Ms. Nichols, did you want to say? Ms. Alexander? Of course.
Tysh Alexander, Assistant City Attorney, who was on the panel for this hiring for the HR Director. And I want to say, first and foremost, I do think that we have a wonderful person who is the interim right now. But when I volunteered to take on this role and be on the panel, I took it on to follow the process, to follow what our policy says we're supposed to do. So what I thought was going to happen this evening, is why I was here just to assist if there was any need for discussion, was that the panel, this body was going to first hear the recommendation of the panel, and then you take a vote. And I think it's important to do that because, Mayor, you mentioned that part of your concerns was you don't get the full picture. Well, I feel like that's why you have two experts who are HR directors, and then you have two internal people who actually know all the parties, or at least one party, pretty well, so you're getting a full picture because you have the two people who actually are here with an internal candidate that can take that in consideration. So that's why I think it's important that if you're gonna have a panel, if that's the policy that we're gonna follow, that we actually follow that policy. Because for me, it's a lot of time that I took out of my time to do this for this body. And if we're just going to not follow it, then as my boss said, we need to reconsider our policy. And I feel like it was very well-rounded with two experts and two internal people so that you could adhere to the recommendation of the panel. And I think that's how it's been done in the past, and I think it's been a good job. And I know, again, there's personal feelings in all this, but I think it's just really important to follow the process. And part of that process is we don't have an HR director here, but it probably would have been better because of everyone's involvement to just have the panel present. This is recommendation number one.
Right.
You all take a vote. If there was no majority, recommendation number two. So that you all are kind of taken out of it. I understand you get an opportunity to interview and talk to them yourselves, but at the end of the day, our policy says you're supposed to be going with the recommendation of the expert that you all chose to adhere to.
And not everyone has this background to understand this, but we had not used MTAS in the past, and our previous HR director set this up for us to use MTAS. And so in my navigating with MTAS, there were several sort of disconnects between the role that they could take and would take. And so ultimately they put together a panel. Ultimately they provided scores and gave those scores to us. But then when I looked at the questions and and they were very intentional in saying repeatedly that they were measuring the behavioral characteristics associated with the various skills, but none of the questions were relevant to experience local or, you see what I'm saying?
But they put that together, but we did the questions. We asked the questions. We did follow-up questions. We didn't just limit it to the questions we were given. We based our questions on the response of the candidate so that we didn't just do what Mr. Grubb asked us to do. We went above and beyond that. And we had discussions. Like, we weren't all like in total agreement in 2 seconds, like, oh, this, and this. There were some that argued, well, this is their strengths. Well, I might say, well, I feel like they're not strong there. So we discussed and we came to a conclusion based on what we were given from those candidates. I mean, it was not just, here's a sheet, y'all ask the questions robotically, give us some numbers. Like, we took a lot of time and effort and discussion in choosing those candidates and giving them a score. And you're right, it's not just about the number, because we got the opportunity to sit there just like Ms. Love, just like Mr. Javance, just like you did, to interact with them, to watch their body language, to see how, and for me personally, to see how they would fit with the city. Because I've been here now 6 years, 7 years. So I feel like internally, I felt like I had a good gauge on, would this person work for the city? Would this be the best candidate for the city? Not necessarily would this be the best person that I would choose, but how would this candidate be for the city? Right. So I want you to know that that's what we did. We didn't just go
I'm
in there.
glad to know that because that wasn't necessarily described to me and I wasn't in the process. But that was something that was like really important to me when I do my interviews is I want to, you know, I hang on to those tidbits that I catch from them that
Correct.
make me be able to gauge things like, you know, what does longevity potentially look like with this candidate? What, you know, what are the things that are going to interfere with them being fully committed potentially, or, you know, how long is it going to take them to be able to come here? Those are the kinds of things that I want to measure as well. And, you know, based on the report that I got from the organizer, it was pretty cut and dry related to these questions. So it's really good to hear you say that.
No. And the organizer, he was so removed, and he allowed us to be the panel. He was kind of giving us guidance as far as questions, but we were the panel. We made the decision. We went beyond just these questions. And he actually left a couple of times, and it was just us. So I just want this body to know that we did take that time, and I considered body language. I mean, my previous history, employment, you know, I'm really assessing people, not just what they say, how they say it, when they said it. Is it just you trying to convince me to hire you? You know, I felt like the panel did a good job of like literally debating certain issues that we all didn't agree on, and we came to a consensus.
And I appreciate your willingness to come up here and speak to that. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I feel like I put you both on the spot enough asking you to serve on the panel, and so I felt like you've done your due, and I appreciated that. But it's helpful to hear these things from you, certainly.
It is, because I didn't think that you would put those kind of things into the mix too.
I
which is
just want to
really
add
important.
in, as part of the process, we were given 25, 27 resumes that we had to score. And then they took each of our individual reviews and scores, grouped them all together, and picked the top 4. And that's how we got those 4 to interview. On that first set of scorings, it was about work history, it was about experience, it was about stability, it was about education, it was about certifications in the HR realm specifically. We went, what was it, 20? There were over 20
Oh, there were a lot.
resumes that we had to score every single one of them on all those criteria. And then they took those collective totals and came up with the high scores that we then interviewed and that y'all were able to interview. And as Latisha said, we debated. We scored them individually on our own after each one was interviewed. And then we collectively discussed and scored and debated and arm wrestled to get someone to raise a score or arm wrestled to get someone to score down, but where we could come to a consensus. And we all, I think for most part, we were all able to go, okay, well, yeah, I can see that. I can give them that score. I understand where you're coming from. I agree to it. There were a couple where we stood firm and nope, we think they excel at their rating. We want to keep them at a 4. This was only a 4-point scale. Either they did not meet the requirements, they partially met the requirements, they fully met the requirements, or they exceeded the requirements. We only have one candidate that scored over, met the requirements. We have 2 that are right there under meeting requirements, and then we have one that's halfway in between partially meets and meets. We only had one clear candidate that fully met and exceeded the requirements in our grading and in our debating. We do have a clear recommendation. So, I want to say that.
Ms. Nichols. That help anybody?
Well, it did help me.
That was definitely helpful. Thank you, ladies.
That was
So
helpful.
next week, if 3 of us are not here, is that a quorum even for a meeting?
It would be a quorum, but
Y'all better be here next week. That's what we're saying.
Won't be here. I'll be out of
Who else is
town.
gonna be gone, dude?
I'm possibly one.
Just
Is anybody else going to interview these people? Because if they're not, then there's really no point in waiting, I guess.
Then let's bring it back up.
I would like that better as well.
Okay, well, then you need to do
Heard
a
from
motion to
internal.
reconsider, because it's.
I'll make a motion to reconsider.
I'll second.
Not reconsider the deferral?
Yes.
Correct. Motion to not reconsider,
No, motion to.
Reconsider the
reconsider the
deferral.
deferral.
It has to
and
be
bring it
someone
back.
that voted no.
Oh,
You abstained.
No one voted no, everyone voted to
No, no
defer.
one voted no.
On
I'm
the
talking about the
deferral.
deferral.
Oh,
Everyone voted to defer it.
Yeah.
Since I made the motion, can I?
sure.
I think the right process at this point is for you two to be here next week and
I
for,
think the right process is go ahead and bring it back up again tonight.
Yeah.
well, I
Like
think,
we're trying to,
I think we're in a difficult circumstance to do that.
because
no, I
Deferred
think
it.
you deferred it, and I think everyone voted in favor of it. And on a motion to reconsider, I don't have my Roberts rules with me. I think it has to be somebody that was on the, could be getting this wrong. On the prevailing, okay, prevailing side. So anyone can make the motion.
that's what I thought.
Which Stephen did.
Stephen did. I second.
Okay.
No, he abstained.
No, we're on the motion to defer. That's where I'm getting
Okay.
confused
Okay.
also. Sorry.
Okay. Call the question.
Okay, all in favor of not deferring?
Aye.
Opposed? Not deferring? Say no? Okay, so we're not going to defer it again.
Not.
Right. So,
So I'll make a motion that we go with candidate number 3.
okay,
Second.
motion, second. Discussion on this.
I didn't realize that all that the panel had put into it other than the questions, because to me, you know, I may have been looking at it as two different ways personally, so I didn't, I'm glad to hear that they also considered those things.
Okay. So with that, all in favor of candidate 3, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, so I will let that go as a 6-1 in favor of candidate 3.
Oh, no, there's 6.
I'm 6.
Sorry.
6-1 for candidate number 3, and we will move that forward to next week. I will go ahead and check those references and have that information prepared for you, if that is agreeable to this body.
Sounds good.
I would encourage you still to reach out to the candidate, so, to the candidate. That would conclude the regular agenda. It brings us to other business. Who in this body has other business this evening? Mr.
I
Carter?
just want to say congratulations to Alvin Johnson and Quentin Kelsey. They started an adult flag football league, and they had a really good turnout on Saturdays. So if you guys are not busy on Saturdays, they'll be starting their games at 2 o'clock at Clearview Park.
Is the field striped off, Stephen?
It was not. They striped it themselves, but David and Tatum with Parks and Recreation have been very willing and helpful to work with that group of guys to get it done.
Is this separate from the one that's already started?
Yes, this is brand new to my knowledge, so I'm assuming it is, and it's adults.
Or adults?
Yes, sir, adults. They had a really wonderful turnout.
Thank you. Any other business this evening? Okay, we will now go to any department head reports. Seeing none. We can move along.
Motion to adjourn?
By Mr. Carter. Second by Councilman Fan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Have a lovely evening. Good night.